You know, I never thought I'd live to see the day when I'd be talking to a little rectangle in my pocket that knows more than I do after 83 years on this earth. But here we are. If my William had lived to see these smartphones, he'd have called it witchcraft. I still remember the day we got our first television set back in 1957. Black and white, of course. The whole neighborhood came over to watch I Love Lucy. Now I've got this thing called Zoom that lets me see my great-grandchildren. In California, while I'm sitting in my living room in Boston, I wasn't always comfortable with technology. Lord knows, I resisted it. When my daughter Sarah first bought me a smartphone 5 years ago, I put it in a drawer for 3 months. Mom, she said, you're being stubborn. And I was. But then my arthritis got worse, and suddenly getting to the grocery store became a real challenge. That's when Sarah took that phone out of the drawer and showed me something that changed everything. It's called an app, Mom, she said, showing me this colorful little square on the screen. You just tap it, and someone will bring your groceries right to your door. I remember thinking, well, that doesn't sound so terrible. And that was just the beginning. Today, I want to share with you the 5 apps that have completely transformed my life. As an 83-year-old woman living alone, these aren't just convenient little tools for me. They've been the difference between independence and having to leave my home of 52 years. The difference between isolation and connection. The difference between feeling helpless and feeling capable. The first time I used that grocery delivery app, I sat at my kitchen table for nearly an hour, carefully selecting each item. I was so afraid of making a mistake. What if I order 50 bananas instead of 5? I worried. My finger hovered over the place order button for what felt like an eternity. When I finally pressed it, my heart was racing like I'd just run a marathon. 2 hours later, a young man named Tyler was at my door with 4 perfect bags of groceries. I gave him a $5 tip and nearly cried when he left. I had done it myself. No calling Sarah. No waiting until she had time to take me shopping. I did it myself. That feeling, that beautiful feeling of taking back control of my life, is what I want to share with you today. Because if I can figure out these apps at 83, with hands that shake and eyes that don't see as well as they used to, then you can too. Trust me on this. The first app I want to tell you about is one that helps me remember to take my medications. When you get to be my age, the pill bottles start multiplying like rabbits. Blood pressure, cholesterol, thyroid, vitamins. I take 11 different pills each day. Some in the morning, some with lunch, some before bed. Keeping track of it all used to be a nightmare. I had this plastic pill organizer with little compartments, but I'd still forget whether I'd taken my evening pills or not. One night, I forgot my heart medication 2 days in a row, and my chest started feeling tight. I ended up in the emergency room at 2 in the morning. The doctor there wasn't unkind, but I could see the look in his eyes. That elderly woman living alone look. The one that says they're already thinking about when you'll need to move to assisted living. I hated that look. It scared me more than the chest pain. When I got home, my grandson Michael set up this medication reminder app on my phone. At first, it seemed complicated. Another thing to learn, another thing to potentially fail at. But Michael was patient. He took pictures of all my pill bottles so the app would show me exactly which pills to take. He set up these gentle little chimes to remind me when it's time. Not jarring alarms, but soft little bells that don't make me feel like I'm in a hospital. The first few days, I kept forgetting to mark the medications as taken in the app. But then the most amazing thing happened. The app sent a message to Michael when I missed logging my evening pills. He called me right away. "Grandma, did you take your heart medication?" Just hearing his voice, knowing that someone was looking out for me even when they weren't physically with me, it was like having a guardian angel in my pocket. Now, this medication app has become as much a part of my routine as brushing my teeth. I haven't missed a pill in over 2 years. My doctor was so impressed at my last checkup that he asked me to show the nurses how it works. Can you imagine that? Me, teaching the medical professionals about technology. William would have gotten such a kick out of that. But it's not just about remembering pills. The app keeps track of my blood pressure readings too. I take my pressure every morning with a little machine, then type the numbers into the app. It creates these beautiful colored charts that show how my pressure has been over time. When I go to the doctor now, I just hand him my phone, and he can see everything. No more trying to remember numbers or keeping messy handwritten logs. He says it helps him adjust my medication more accurately. I feel like I'm partnering with him in my health care, not just being a passive patient. There was a day last winter when the app noticed my blood pressure had been creeping up. For 3 days in a row, it suggested I call my doctor. I might have ignored those rising numbers on my own, but seeing them highlighted in red on the screen made it real. My doctor adjusted my medication right away, probably preventing another trip to the emergency room. How do you put a price on that kind of peace of mind? The second app that's changed my life is one for video calling. Now, I know what you're thinking. Everyone knows about video calls these days, but when you've lived through rotary phones and thought that call waiting was high technology, seeing your loved one's faces through a screen in your hand still feels like magic. My family is scattered all over the country now. Sarah is in Phoenix with her husband. Michael is in Seattle, working for some computer company. My youngest grandchild, Emily, is studying abroad in Japan this year. In the old days, I'd be lucky to get a phone call once a week and see them in person at Christmas, if the weather allowed for travel. Now, every Sunday at 4 p.m., my phone lights up and suddenly my living room is filled with the faces of everyone. I love Sarah in her kitchen, Michael often walking around his neighborhood in Seattle showing me the sights, Emily from her tiny apartment in Tokyo where it's already Monday morning. All of us together, despite being thousands of miles apart. I remember one Sunday when I wasn't feeling well. I almost didn't answer the video call because I didn't want them to worry. But the moment my face appeared on their screens, Sarah knew something was wrong. "Mom, you're pale. What's going on?" I tried to brush it off, but she insisted I show her the thermostat in my house. Turns out my heat had stopped working, and I hadn't even noticed how cold it had gotten. The house was 52 degrees. Sarah called a repair service in my area while we were still on the call. By that evening, I had heat again. Would they have noticed something was wrong during a regular phone call? Maybe not. But seeing my face, seeing my home in the background, the video doesn't lie. That app might have saved me from pneumonia. But it's not just for emergencies, it's for the everyday moments too. Being able to see Emily's face light up when she tells me about her adventures in Japan. Watching Michael's new puppy learn to fetch. Seeing Sarah's new haircut. These might seem like small things, but when you're in your 80s, these small connections are what make life worth living. I've set up the app so that all I have to do is tap one button to join our Sunday calls. No complicated passwords or settings to remember. Just one green button. And suddenly, I'm not alone anymore. For someone who lives by themselves, that's more precious than gold. Last Christmas, I couldn't travel to Phoenix because of a snowstorm. I was heartbroken thinking about spending the holiday alone. But Sarah propped up her tablet at the dinner table, and I was right there with them for the whole meal. They even waited to open presents until I was on the call. It wasn't the same as being there in person, but it was so much better than being alone with my memories and a frozen dinner. The third app that's transformed my life helps me get transportation. I gave up driving 3 years ago after I had that fender bender in the grocery store parking lot. No one was hurt, thank goodness, but it scared me enough to know it was time to hand over my keys. That was one of the hardest days of my life. My car represented freedom. Without it, I felt trapped, dependent on others for even the simplest errands. For a while, I relied on Sarah and her husband when they could drive me, or I called a local senior shuttle service that needed to be booked days in advance. I missed doctor's appointments because the shuttle was full. I stopped going to my weekly bridge game because it felt like too much trouble to arrange rides. My world was shrinking, one canceled plan at a time. Then Michael showed me this ride-sharing app. "Grandma," he said, "it's like having a personal driver on call whenever you need one." I was skeptical. The idea of getting into a stranger's car seemed dangerous. What if they kidnapped me? Michael laughed at that. "Grandma, the app tracks exactly where you go, and you can share your trip with me so I'll know exactly where you are." My first ride was to my doctor's appointment. I must have checked the app 20 times that morning to make sure I was doing it right. When the car pulled up, I was so nervous I almost canceled. The driver was a woman about my daughter's age, named Deborah. She helped me with my seatbelt and asked if the temperature in the car was comfortable. By the time we arrived at the doctor's office, we were chatting like old friends. She even gave me her direct number and said to call her anytime I needed a ride in the future. Now I use the app several times a week. To the grocery store when I need fresh produce rather than delivery. To my bridge club on Thursdays. To the hairdresser every other Saturday. Sometimes just to the park when it's nice out and I want to feed the ducks. I've gotten to know several regular drivers in my area. They help me with my walker. They wait to make sure I get inside safely. And they've become a part of my community. Last month, I took a ride all by myself to the art museum to see a new exhibit. It was the first time I'd done something like that, something just for the pleasure of it, since William died. The driver, a young man named Jason, asked if I needed him to come in with me to help get my ticket. I told him no, I could manage, and I did. I spent 3 wonderful hours looking at beautiful paintings, had lunch in the museum cafe, then used the app to call another ride home. That night, I slept better than I had in months. I felt like myself again, not just an old woman, but Catherine, who has always loved art and beautiful things. The fourth app that's become essential to my daily life is for grocery and meal delivery. I mentioned it earlier, it was my gateway into the world of apps, but it's become so much more than just a convenience. It's become a lifeline. Before I started using delivery services, grocery shopping had become an ordeal. Even with my daughter's help, navigating those huge stores with my walker was exhausting. I'd be in pain for days afterward, and carrying the bags into the house, forget about it. I'd end up buying less than I needed just so I could manage the bags. The first time I ordered groceries through the app, it felt like Christmas morning when the delivery arrived. Everything was so fresh, better than what I would have picked out myself with my failing eyesight. The young man who delivered them carried everything right into my kitchen, and even asked if I needed help putting the heavy items away. I nearly hugged him. Now I order groceries every week without a second thought. I can take my time selecting exactly what I want without my feet hurting or feeling rushed. I can easily check my pantry while I'm ordering to see what I actually need. And I've learned all sorts of tricks, like saving my regular shopping list in the app so I don't have to start from scratch each time. But the real game changer came when Michael showed me that the same app could also deliver meals from restaurants. "You mean I can get that soup I love from the diner?" I asked him, hardly believing it. "The one with the homemade noodles." He laughed and showed me how to find the diner on the app. For someone who's been cooking for over 70 years, sometimes 3 meals a day, the ability to have a warm, delicious meal delivered that I didn't have to prepare is nothing short of miraculous. On days when my arthritis is flaring up and cooking is too painful, or when I'm just plain tired of my own cooking, I treat myself to a delivery. The delivery people are always so kind. One young woman, Aisha, even noticed that I was having trouble with the containers and took a moment to open them all for me before she left. I worried at first about the expense. I'm on a fixed income, and restaurant meals aren't cheap. But Sarah helped me set a budget for deliveries, and I found that many places offer senior discounts if you just ask. And honestly, when I compare it to the physical toll of shopping and cooking, or the emotional cost of eating the same frozen dinners day after day, it's worth every penny. There was one night last winter during a terrible snowstorm when the power went out in my neighborhood. It was too cold to stay in the house, but the roads were too dangerous for Sarah to come get me. I was starting to panic when I remembered the app. Surely no one would deliver in this weather, I thought, but I tried anyway. To my amazement, a driver named Kevin accepted the order. He brought me hot soup and bread from a cafe that still had power, along with a flashlight he had in his car when I mentioned my power was out. "My grandmother lives alone too," he told me. "I'd want someone to do this for her. I'll never forget that kindness." The fifth app that's changed my life is one that helps me stay mentally sharp. At my age, keeping your mind active is just as important as taking care of your body. I've always loved word puzzles and crosswords. William and I used to race to finish the Sunday crossword. He almost always won. The smartest man I ever knew. After he died, I kept doing the puzzles in the newspaper. But my eyesight made it harder and harder to see those tiny squares. I was starting to give them up when Emily showed me this brain game app during one of our video calls. "Grandma, you'll love this," she said. "You can make the letters as big as you want, and if you get stuck, it gives you little hints." She downloaded it onto my phone and showed me how to play a word search game. The letters were large and colorful, much easier to see than the newspaper. When I completed my first puzzle, the screen filled with stars and a congratulatory message. I felt ridiculously proud of myself. Now I play brain games on my app every morning with my coffee. Word searches, memory matches, number puzzles. I rotate through them to work different parts of my brain. The app keeps track of my scores and shows me how I'm improving over time. There's something so satisfying about seeing that upward trend on the charts, proof that this old brain still has some life in it yet. My favorite game is one where you have to find all the differences between two similar pictures. William and I used to play a version of this in magazines. I'm surprisingly good at it, better than my grandchildren. In fact, Emily and I have a friendly competition going to see who can get the highest score each week. She beats me at the reaction time games, but I usually win at the observation ones. I like to remind her that wisdom comes with age. My doctor tells me that keeping mentally active can help stave off cognitive decline. Whether that's true or not, I know that these games give structure to my days. They make me feel accomplished, like I'm still learning and growing even at 83. And the connection with Emily over our shared competition brings us closer. Despite the physical distance, I've noticed that on days when I play my brain games, I feel sharper, I remember things better, I'm quicker with words when talking to neighbors. I even feel more confident doing things like checking my bank account online or sending emails. It's like the mental exercise wakes up all parts of my brain. There was a period last year when I went through a bout of depression after my sister passed away. For weeks, I barely got out of bed. I stopped doing most of my regular activities, but somehow I still reached for my phone each morning to play at least one game. It was a tiny thread of normalcy when everything else felt dark. Looking back, I think it was one of the things that helped pull me through. That small daily accomplishment, that little burst of color and success on the screen. The app sends me a notification each morning at 8 a.m., a gentle reminder that it's time for our brain date. I've come to look forward to that little chime. It's a friend calling me to play, a reason to get my mind moving. Some of my contemporaries talk about technology as if it's cold or impersonal, but I've found just the opposite. These apps have brought warmth, connection, and purpose to my life when I needed it most. You know, when you get to be my age, people start to treat you differently. They speak louder, slower, as if age has affected your hearing and your intelligence in equal measure. They make decisions for you for your own good. They focus on what you can no longer do rather than what you still can. These 5 apps have given me back something precious: respect. When I order my own groceries, arrange my own transportation, manage my own medications, I'm telling the world and reminding myself that I am still capable, still independent, still here. I won't pretend it was easy learning to use these apps. There were tears of frustration, moments when I wanted to throw my phone across the room. My arthritic fingers sometimes pressed the wrong buttons. My eyes missed small details on the screen. But each time I pushed through the frustration, the reward on the other side was worth it. I think about my friend Mildred, who moved into assisted living last year. She's the same age as me, with similar health issues, but she never embraced technology the way I did. Now she's dependent on the facility's schedule for everything: when she eats, when she can go out, when she sees a doctor. Meanwhile, I'm still in the home where William and I raised our children, where my grandchildren visit for Sunday dinner, where every corner holds a memory. Is it just the apps that have kept me independent? Of course not. I'm fortunate to have supportive family, good health care, and enough money to meet my basic needs. But these digital tools have been the bridge that connected all those resources, that made everything else possible. There's something else these apps have given me, something I didn't expect: community. The regular drivers who greet me by name, the delivery people who take a moment to chat, the pharmacy technician who noticed through my medication app that I hadn't picked up my prescription and called to check on me. These small interactions weave a safety net around me. In a world where traditional community ties have frayed, technology has helped me create new ones. I'm not naive. I know there are risks to all this connectivity. Sarah has helped me set up good passwords and taught me about not sharing personal information online. Michael made sure my payment details are stored securely. I've had a few scam calls, but I've learned to recognize them. The benefits far outweigh the risks. Last month, I attended a memorial service for my friend Betty. She was 86, a wonderful woman who volunteered at the library well into her 80s. At the reception afterward, I found myself talking to her grandson about how I use these apps to maintain my independence. He looked surprised, pleasantly so, and asked if I would be willing to show his grandmother's friends how to use them too. Apparently, several of Betty's friends had been struggling since her death, as she was the one who drove them to appointments and helped them shop. So now, every Tuesday afternoon, I host a little technology session in my living room. 3 women and 1 man, all over 75, bring their phones and their questions. We order lunch using the food delivery app, and I teach them one new skill each week. Gloria mastered the transportation app and took her first solo ride to her granddaughter's piano recital. Howard now orders his groceries online and says he's eating better than he has in years since his wife died. Margaret uses the video call app to read bedtime stories to her great-grandchildren in Colorado, watching their faces light up when they succeed, seeing their worlds expand week by week. It might be the most rewarding thing I've done in my retirement. Who would have thought that I, Catherine Wilson, who once put a smartphone in a drawer for 3 months, would become a technology teacher to other seniors? Life has a funny way of surprising you, especially when you stay open to new possibilities. I think about what William would say if he could see me now, tapping away at my smartphone, confidently navigating these digital tools. He was always the early adopter in our family, bringing home the first microwave on our block, insisting on upgrading to color TV before the neighbors. That's my Kathy. I can almost hear him say, always surprising me. So, that's my story. 5 simple apps that have kept me in my home, connected to my family, managing my health, nourishing my body, and stimulating my mind. 5 apps that have preserved my dignity and independence. 5 apps that have shown me that even at 83, I can learn, grow, and adapt. If you're watching this and thinking it's too late for you to embrace technology, I hope my story changes your mind. If I can do it with my arthritis and my bifocals and my lifelong technophobia, you can too. Start small. Be patient with yourself. Ask for help when you need it. The rewards are worth the effort. And if you're watching this and you have an elderly parent or grandparent who's resistant to technology, please be patient with them too. Remember that what seems intuitive to you is brand new to them. Remember that they grew up in a different World, meet them where they are, not where you think they should be. Technology isn't perfect. These apps occasionally have glitches or updates that change how they work, which can be disorienting. Sometimes the delivery is late, or the ride doesn't show up on time. But the independence and connection they provide far outweigh these minor inconveniences. As I look toward the future, I know there will be more challenges ahead. My health will continue to change, my needs will evolve, but I face that future with more confidence knowing that I have these tools and the knowledge of how to use them in my pocket. Life doesn't end at 65 or 75 or even 85. It changes, certainly, but the desire to live with purpose, connection, and independence, that remains constant. These 5 apps haven't just made my life easier, they've made it fuller, richer, more my own. So if you take anything away from my story, let it be this: it's never too late to learn something new, never too late to adapt, never too late to surprise yourself with what you're capable of. These old hands can still reach for new tools, this old brain can still master new skills, and this old heart can still feel the thrill of accomplishment when I place my grocery order, arrange my ride, or beat my granddaughter at a brain game. Thank you for listening to an old woman's reflections. I hope they've been of some use to you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I believe my medication app is chimming. It's time for my afternoon pills. And then perhaps I'll order some lunch. After all, technology has made my life easier, but it hasn't made the day any longer. There's still so much living to do.